Welcome to another empowering episode of Without Regret, the podcast that brings you stories of triumph against all odds. I'm your host, Tamara, and today's guest's journey is nothing short of inspiring. Meet Ryan Gray, a graduate of the University of North Carolina, Asheville, with a degree in literature. In 2016, he embarked on a path that led him to his current pursuit, a career in behavioral health as a peer support specialist, and author of Twilight in York, a creative nonfiction narrative of a short period in his life. What sets Ryan's story apart is his unwavering resilience in the face of severe challenges. Battling schizophrenia, depression, ADHD, and anxiety, he stands tall as a self-supporting individual. Not just financially, but in every aspect of his life. Remarkably, Ryan has maintained his independence for 15 years. But his journey is not one walked alone. Clean for 15 years, Ryan attributes his recovery to the support and encouragement he received from a network of compassionate individuals. Nurses, social workers, counselors, doctors, and sponsors all played a crucial role in his transformative journey. In this episode, Ryan opens up about his path to recovery, the hurdles he overcame, and the people who made a significant impact on his life. Get ready for a conversation that sheds light on the strength that lies within and the importance of a supportive community. Stay tuned for a captivating conversation with Ryan Gray. Respect and request from Ryan, I have edited parts of this podcast out. So if there are places where the story doesn't seem to be continuous, that would be why. So thanks for your understanding. So Ryan, let's if we can, I want to start a little bit in your kind of early childhood, adolescent years. I think, how old were you when you tried marijuana for the first time? 14?
No, I didn't try marijuana until I went to college when I was
Oh, okay,
19. When I
college.
was 19, I drank. The first time I drank, I think I was 16.
Okay.
And that was sort of the beginning of it. But it was just once. I drank enough to get drunk that first time, but somewhere between the ages of at 16 and 19, or 16 and 18 when I went to college. I didn't drink again after that. After that point, it was the just that initial drink at 16,
Mm-hmm.
and my story in recovery kind of begins when I went to college and started smoking marijuana. My freshman year in college, I got straight A's, and then my sophomore year, I started smoking marijuana, and my grades started to suffer. I was getting B's, a C, um,
So, but you also suffer from schizophrenia, correct?
correct, correct.
Did you have symptoms of that when you were younger? Or is it typical for those symptoms to come out in your, early 20s?
Early 20s is statistically like the most likely age that you would develop certain mental health problems. I think I was had a psychotic break when I was 19. Yeah, 19. And I was diagnosed with psychosis, which later kind of morphed into schizophrenia, schizoaffective disorder, and then full blown schizophrenia. Um, yeah, just like I think that's a good place to start is the when I was 19, and I
Okay.
was that would have been in like 2004.
And what did that look like? What does a psychotic episode look like for you?
Um,
Or it's not the same for everyone.
and then they called the police, and I was basically picked up on a paramedic, um, what do you call it, EMT,
Like a
ambulance.
psychiatric hold kind of thing.
Yeah, in a went to on the back of an ambulance to a nearby um, mental health facility. Um, and I tried after that. I tried to go back to school, and just wasn't happening. And I think other people who suffer dual diagnosis, which is having both addiction and mental health issues at the same time can probably relate to this. Is that when I would use my mental health would just plummet. I mean, it was like overnight, just manic, stopped eating, not sleeping, um, hostility toward my parents, and that that was probably a over the course of a couple of years that I was like that, and I started to, and I've talked about this on a podcast before, is especially for teenagers and younger people that it's very easy to go to the drugstore and buy the or steal the like the cough syrup that they have. The That was my drug of choice. It's called the active ingredient in Robitussin cough syrup is called dextromethorphan, also called DXM. And so that I would be transitioning to different locations, not knowing anybody, not knowing any drug dealers, not having any money, but it was very easy for me to go to like a Rite Aid and just
Right.
see it. Yeah.
I honestly didn't even know that was a thing before I read your book. I knew people drank cough medicine, but I didn't know that that was why. I thought it was because there's alcohol in cough syrup and the alcoholics were drinking it. I never knew that DXM was a thing.
Oh yeah, it's a pretty big thing. I mean, I've over the years I've met people with DXM as their primary their drug of choice. That was like I said, that was my drug
Yeah.
of choice.
And easy to get, like you said, no matter where you are, if you
Mhm.
know people or not. If there's a drugstore, it's
Yeah,
available.
yeah. So if you don't have money,
Hmm.
especially for teenagers, because teenagers it's too easy for they really shouldn't have it over the counter anymore. I mean, I know they use like people have abused Sudafed. I never tried Sudafed, but I know that people make crystal meth, or at
Hmm.
least I've heard they make crystal meth
Right.
with Sudafed. So
Yeah. So now to
um,
get the real Sudafed, you have to go to the pharmacy to get that now and show
really,
ID and everything. Yeah, because I personally like Sudafed for allergy related
yeah,
issues. And I thought they completely took it off the market and I was like bummed because it was the only thing that really worked well for me. And then I found out by somebody you can go to the pharmacy and ask for it, but you have to show your ID and sign for it. And
Mhm.
so that's really how the Robitussin should be too.
Yeah, it should. I've At one point it's only happened once, but I went to a pharmacy one time. It was in Maryland, and it had some kind of like system, something on their computer where they took your name and would only give you a certain, it would monitor how much you're buying.
Hmm.
And if you can't buy more than a certain amount a week or a certain amount a month
Right.
or
But that's if
some,
you're buying it.
yeah, exactly.
If you're stealing it.
Yeah, yeah. Um,
So one thing I've always been curious about is the link, I guess, between drug addiction and schizophrenia. Um, they seem to, in my limited view of things, limited knowledge, go hand in hand. And I always wondered if,
mhm,
obviously, people have psychosis and problems without doing drugs. I'm sure there are plenty of people out there that have those issues that don't do drugs. But I always wondered if there was a causal relationship between drugs and schizophrenia. Like, would
mhm.
you have had that if you hadn't been doing the drugs? Can it cause that? I guess.
That's a very good question. Like, for example, I recently had somebody very, very close to me that, I was concerned that they were drinking too much, and they kind of admitted that their depression had worsened, and that they were medicating the depression. So a lot of the time, um, we're trying to medicate the
Yeah.
mental health with substances. Um, Other
Right.
times, again, you can go the other direction. You can start Um, the substances cause the mental health. Because I had the psychotic break, I didn't think it was from the marijuana. I thought that
Yeah.
that psychosis kind of cropped up on its own,
Hmm.
and
Yeah, I wouldn't think marijuana would be something that would cause that,
yeah,
but it's always like a, does it cause it or does it just exacerbate it? Are you doing the drugs because you're self-medicating, which is most likely, I would think, the case. And then um I lost my train of thought there, sorry.
Mhm.
But or there's really no way to know. I would, maybe the mental health issues would have cropped up anyway, regardless of the drugs. But since
Exactly.
happened first, how would you know? There's really,
Mhm.
I would imagine, no way to really know. So
Um,
is this something that runs in your family?
no, no.
Interesting.
I think I had like an alcoholic great grandfather or something like that.
But no
Uh,
psychosis.
no, it was just me.
Wow. Um, so okay, so you're 19. Like,
Yeah,
was it a hallucination? Were you,
it was
trying to run from
delusional.
something? Okay.
I thought I was like possessed,
Okay.
and I needed to do that.
Yeah.
Other than, you know,
Because you
and
could
that's,
hear, were you hearing things? And that's why,
yeah,
yeah,
like
okay. I don't want, we don't
voices.
have to get too deep into it. I really prefer not to, honestly, just because I don't want to trigger other people.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
no, that's fine.
as much as you're willing to share, but like I said, I don't want to get too deep into it. I just want to kind of understand, what we're dealing with in the beginning, because I think that will help people see what you were ultimately able to overcome. So, so now you're hospitalized. Were you officially diagnosed were you hospitalized for like a 72 hours or something like that, where you were like on a psychiatric hold?
Yeah, I was in like a psych ward, probably about a week and a half, something like that, and then I felt like I was ready to go back to school, but like I was saying, that was kind of a downward spiral. I didn't change after the break. I didn't change my behaviors.
Were you taking medication? Did they prescribe anything?
I don't think I was prescribed to antidepressants, but
But not.
I
Okay.
no.
Seroquel, I think you mentioned in the book, right? Is that something you took or are still taking?
No, but I was taking it for a while. Right now I'm taking a clozapine, which is really a miracle drug for me.
Good.
As long as I take it, my schizophrenia is pretty much subdued. Um, yeah, but I've had times where I've taken Seroquel. Um, not as I felt like Seroquel caused me more kind of discomfort. That it was more sedating
Mm,
than the clozapine was or is.
okay.
Um, but that was like I was saying that was my sophomore year in college that happened with the break, and that yeah, like I said, that was just I was just a downward spiral. I was abusing other drugs. When I had money for it, I would smoke marijuana. And
Find that it
yeah,
helped you, the marijuana?
no,
Right.
I thought well, for me, it led to other drugs.
Right.
Um, I don't think I think it would cause me paranoia too. I don't think it helped me really. I can't say that it did.
Yeah. What was the compulsion to do it? Why did you do it if it wasn't helping? It must have given you something, right? I would
Yeah,
think.
uh,
An escape.
um, escape. I thought that it I thought that it enhanced my creativity,
That makes sense.
playing guitar, writing. I used to take take drugs and write while I was on them.
Hmm.
Um, it's the simplest. I think like I had found something that made me feel good, and so I wanted to recreate that as much as I could and
Hmm.
continue to. It is sort of an escape. People do use it to medicate their symptoms. Um,
So when you say you went back to school and you didn't change your behavior, what do you mean by that?
I continue to use probably more and more. Um, I didn't, say, okay, I've got a drug problem and I need to stop doing drugs and I need to try to go back to school. It was like I just went basically straight from, I think the same day that I got out of the mental ward, I went to um, a music show and I was just at the show interacting with people thinking, I wonder if these people knew that I just got what I just did and that I just got out of this my mental ward. So it's sort of it just I didn't I went to the mental ward, but I didn't take it upon myself to change any of the thing,
Were you in denial about that you even had a problem? You didn't want to admit it?
yeah, yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. A
Yeah.
lot of denial.
Yeah.
My parents, they try to help me. Um, pretty much, I mean, they just wouldn't give up on me. I went through a lot of different, um, I think I've been hospitalized so many times that I can't even really remember every single hospitalization that I've had, but um, a lot of different treatment. I don't know how to.
Yeah. It took a long time. It took a lot, it sounds like. So what then was the turning point? What made it stick finally?
Well, the my book that I just wrote, Twilight in York, it's in 2007. I think I started using. I think I started smoking marijuana in 2004. So from the period of 2004 and 2007, um, I was an active addict, and the book sort of just talks about the. It's called Twilight in York. Twilight because Twilight, like the period between active addiction and recovery, somewhere a twilight period, somewhere in between. So
Okay.
that that was like the book is sort of the about the events that lead up to my decision to get clean.
Okay.
Your question was
What was the thing that made it stick finally?
that that was when I hit bottom, which was essentially I had been on and off the streets of York for a few months, and the people I was living with, some people were stay in their basement, and they were being evicted. So I essentially had nowhere else to go. I'd been on and off the street, but not like full fledged homelessness. I'd stayed at the nearby shelter a few times, but not like I would find places to crash at people's couches. Um, but I was sort of I was on my last limb with the when these when these folks got evicted in the end of 2007, and it was a choice I didn't didn't have a job, didn't have any money, didn't have many friends, distant from my family. I was basically homeless. I was an addict, um, and I just didn't have any other choice. I mean, I was choosing between full-fledged homelessness and, at least giving. I just, give it a shot. Nothing overnight. Just
Okay.
that willingness to, because my parents drove to York and picked me up, and took me to rehab, and I, finally, I was willing to at least give it a shot because I didn't have anywhere else to go.
Right. Right. You were like, okay, I've seen the future if I don't do this. And
Yeah,
it's not
exactly,
pretty.
exactly. And it's unfortunate that a lot of people, in most cases, the person has to hit bottom before any kind of change takes place.
Mhm.
I have met people who, you know, they realized that they were addicts, or realized that they were alcoholics, earlier, kind of a little bit more foresight than most addicts have these days. So, um, I mean, most of my friends that I had at that time actually passed away from, overdose.
Yeah, I kept
So
waiting for that to happen in the book.
yeah, yeah. The second volume, right now, that it's just the first volume that's out. The second volume I've written it and finished writing it, gotten it edited and polished and proofread and everything. I just haven't. I think I'm getting to the point where I'm ready to start the publishing process on that,
Okay.
because I just haven't. Uh, just being mindful of the timing,
Right.
but I don't want
Okay.
to leave. I also don't want to leave my readers out to dry. So
Yeah, it is a cliffhanger.
yeah,
It is a
yeah.
cliffhanger. I was like, oh, that's it? Okay. All right.
essentially, essentially,
I knew, I mean, I
essentially,
got to a point where I was like, there's not much left. I don't know if we're going to get to the recovery part in this book.
yeah. It's essentially, what I did was I wrote it as one book, and I think, yeah, it was over 600 pages, and it was just it was a lot to manage, both for me and for the reader, to have a 600-page book to read. That's a long book, so that's why I split it into two volumes.
Yeah. Well, it was, I wouldn't call it an easy read per
Yeah.
se, but it's definitely engaging. It was not something where I was like, oh, I can't, like, it was
Hmm.
engaging where I never hesitated to pick it up. Like on my lunch hour at work, I'd sit at my, little
Yeah.
table in my office and read while I ate my lunch, or, before bed, or instead of watching some of my TV shows even, so,
Hmm.
but it was not an easy read by any means. I mean, it was, like I was saying before we hit record, you do a great job of describing the events. And I felt like it was like getting into your mind, getting into your brain
Hmm.
thoughts, and, could really grasped, I think, an understanding of the thoughts that I'd never had before. So,
Yeah, I appreciate your feedback. It is sort of like somebody. Um, I sometimes compare my writing to Jack Kerouac, because he's my favorite author. And I've tried to mimic sort of some of his writing style, but, um, like, if if Kerouac is sort of a window to the Beat Generation, I'm trying to, like, create a window about being on the street, the life of an addict, and the life of a homeless addict,
Yeah.
because it's a
And the
whole.
struggle. I think one thing that resonated too, that really, really came through for me was the people that you were describing and how much of it you said it is creative nonfiction. So it is based on true events, I guess,
Yeah,
but not
yeah,
100% true. But
correct.
the genuine caring of the people, I think we have a tendency to look at drug addicts on the street and just think, oh, they're horrible people. These people weren't horrible people. I think
Mhm.
you guys genuinely had some sort of caring for each other, right? I mean,
Mhm. For
you looked out
sure.
for each other, even though you were enabling each other's behavior, which could, you know, misery loves company, right? But I think you really brought out especially in the very end of the book, how much you guys really had each other's backs.
Yeah, and that kind of sort of resonates that I think there's a lot of stigma um, about addicts or about people on the streets that, like almost this idea that if we wanted to stop using, we would just stop. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and it turns out that getting clean is much harder than that.
Mm-hmm.
It's a physical as well as a mental disease. Um, it's just uh, it's not a pretty, it's not something that you want to. My publisher referred to it as the dark underbelly of the town, like sort of like being swept under the carpet, kind of as something, like you don't, like you something that you don't want to admit about yourself or about
Right.
your loved ones.
Yes. Right.
But there's people, like it's very hard that I've actually worked at a rehab facility, and I just saw people that would just struggle so much. They would get, a few years of clean time under their belt, and then they would go back out and relapse, and just being at a loss. What am I doing wrong? What is it that I need to be doing that I'm not doing? Um, just desperate about trying to get clean. People with kids that they are there for their kids. They want their kids back, and
Right.
they just can't beat it. They just can't figure it out.
Yeah. But then, that's what this is for. That's why I do what I'm doing with the podcast and have people like you come on and talk about it, is to, you know, I don't know if there's a gene, a key, something that's different about you maybe than these people that can't seem to shake it. I don't know what the answer is, but there's hope, I think is the point, right? There is hope
Mhm.
that you were in a pretty darn dark place and you came out of it. And if you can do it, other people can do it, right? And
Uh,
I don't know what's worse, or if it's even worth comparing. It's probably not worth comparing, but I feel like people are either in a place that you were in because of mental health issues or because of trauma, and both of those are hard to face the reality of, that you have to face if you're not self-medicated, or you know what I mean? Like, that's what you're saying is, like, if you wanted to quit, you just quit. Well, if you quit, then now you have to face head on the traumas and the mental health and try to fix it.
mhm.
That's the hard part, I think.
For sure. I think, in my opinion, that it's not an overnight thing, like to go from um, completely to the point where you're completely understanding your own recovery. Like for me, it was just a little bit of willingness.
Hmm.
Um, in that willingness opens the door just a little bit, and that's sort of a starting point. But you said like trauma. I feel like I've seen a lot of abuse, like people who were previously abused.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah, that's been the common thread of the people that I've had on my podcast has been some sort of abuse, neglect.
mhm.
So you're the first one that I've had on that's had a mental illness. So, or I'm sure depression, whatever, but I mean something like schizophrenia that's like more serious and hard to treat. And when it comes to mental illness, and like I mentioned to you when we were communicating prior, the public mental health system is, and it's state, right? It depends on the different states that you're in. So I can only speak to the one state that I have a personal uh, connection to somebody that lives in that state that's dealing with it right now. And thank God she's trying. She's putting in the work.
Yeah,
She's not giving up, I should say. I don't know if she's putting in the work. She's probably going to listen, but sorry. So she
yeah,
might put in a little more work, but I feel like it's like you get an appointment and then you have to wait another month and then they prescribe you something and then you wait 2 months before you can even talk to somebody about how it's helping. And it's just,
mhm.
it's frustrating. And you were fortunate enough that it sounds like your parents were able to help you to where you didn't have to rely so much on the public health system or.
Yeah. That's sort of the end game was um, after I got clean. When they picked me up in New York in 2007, when I had that bottom, where I hit bottom, that experience. I was basically well. I went to rehab first for 28 days, and I went to a dual diagnosis facility for 2.5 months. Um, and then I went to a place called Cooper Reese, uh, and that was another inpatient treatment, um, mostly focusing on the mental health side rather than, they had uh, support groups and stuff for people with substance abuse issues, but the facility was mostly for mentally ill people. I got my life back, and it took years. I was at Cooper Reese for 2 years.
Oh, wow. That was
Um,
inpatient or outpatient? I'm sorry.
I was inpatient.
Inpatient for 2 years. That's
Yeah,
not cheap,
no,
you know? It's not
no,
cheap. I mean, that's the thing. The people that need this help the most can't afford it most of the time. So that's
yeah,
tough.
yeah, and yeah, it wasn't cheap. You're correct. Um, um, but after that, I was in a group home. It was essentially they just called it a group home, but it was a home for mentally ill people who couldn't support themselves. And I was there for like 4.5 years. And while I was there, I stayed clean. Um, I went back to school. I got my bachelor's in literature. Um, I ended up getting a car, um, getting involved in the recovery community. Um, and eventually I moved out and uh, started supporting myself.
And you are now fully financially independent.
Yes.
That's fantastic. That's awesome. I mean, what a freaking comeback story.
Yeah.
Congratulations. I was thinking this morning as I was finishing up the last couple pages of the book, I thought I had more to go than that, but I was thinking how, and maybe you feel this way now, you tell me if you do, but I like knowing that I can pay my bills and knowing where my next meal is going to come from. It's hard for me to imagine being in a place where you don't know. Now, I grew up in a place where, you know, we didn't have much, and sometimes meals were, there was always something to eat, but it wasn't always the best, you know, and sometimes there was no electricity, and a lot of times we didn't have a phone. And I think maybe that's why I like so much now that I am independent and can pay my bills and stuff. But it's just so hard for me to imagine being in that place where you were, where you don't, you know, you're scrounging up your money and trying to come up with a plan for food and everything. Like, it's so hard for me to imagine that place. So do you feel now that you're independent, does that give you a boost that you
Yeah,
are paying
for
for your
sure.
own way, and you're not dependent on other people? And
Yeah, it does for sure. Those were I kind of went over those more significant things, like the going back to school was big.
mhm.
Getting to graduate. I was probably at least 5 years older than anybody else that was graduating, but
I graduated when I was like 42, so I get it.
yeah, it was 2016, so that's what, 8 years ago.
I
So I would have
graduated
been
in
like
17.
30. I'm 30, yeah, 30. So I was like 31 or 32.
But do you feel
Yeah,
like you had a much better appreciation for it? I did. I felt like the
yeah.
people that were in my classes that were straight out of high school, they were just there because they were supposed to be there. That's just what they were supposed to do. You know, I felt like I had a much better appreciation for it.
Oh no, the people at the other students there are unbelievably smart, intelligent,
Yeah.
well read a lot. Um, just I felt like kind of left in the dust a little bit because there's
Oh,
like
wow.
really, and it would have like people with taking like 20 credits and working at the same time,
Oh, wow.
and it was just I actually, when I went back to school, uh because of my income being so low, the federal aid paid for all my tuition and books actually.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. While you were writing the book, did you ever, because some of the experiences that you described, you used words like euphoric and peaceful. Is it hard do you ever miss it at all? Do you ever worry? Because, okay, so you had a period of about 4 years that you were using, and now you've been clean for 15 years. So,
Before, yeah.
so three times as long than you were using. But of course, still, I'm sure having to deal with the mental illness. So,
Mhm.
is there ever a fear that you could fall back into it? Is there ever a day where you're just like, oh, I miss it? I want to be careful with that question. I apologize if it's,
No, not at all. Like I have not experienced, like, I think I've romanticized about it, but I've never actually like contemplated going to the liquor store or anything.
good.
Like, I don't think I've actually considered it. Like, I think that there's like scenes, locations that I avoid. Um,
Mhm.
for a while, I wouldn't even really want to be around people drinking, but I've gotten used to just being around that. And
Yeah, so common.
yeah, but like York itself is, I haven't been there since I left in 2007. It, that might not be the best place for me to be,
Do
but
you know what happened to the other people that are in your book? Are they real?
um yeah, Yeah, well, most of them actually ended up passing away,
Mm.
and that doesn't really. In the second book, second volume, that's addressed.
Okay.
The other main character, the Matt character,
Hmm.
name was changed, but he's had relative success. I think he's had married and kids, and
Good. That's awesome. Um, so where do you think your strength comes from today to keep going and not fall back?
um, well, I have support groups, the recovery community, other people in recovery. Um, I have my family. I talk to my family every week, and we're pretty close. I actually had a panic, sort of a panic. I don't know, like I want to say meltdown, but I ended up staying in Maryland with my parents for about a month recently. The month of December. So they were there for me, and I was uncomfortable. So I had a very minor um, or car accident, and they were, I was uncomfortable about driving home from Maryland to North Carolina. So they drove me down and spent a week down here just trying to make sure I was okay. So having some kind of support network, even if it's only like one person. Um,
Do they check up on you, or do you check in with them? You said you talk to them once a week. Um, you're talking about a support system, but I feel like somebody who's struggling may not be so willing to reach out to the support. So do they check in on you?
um, it's kind of I, either way. Sometimes they'll call them, sometimes they'll call me. Um, they I think it's about an 8 hour drive, so they can't like check, just easily check in on me. I don't know if that's
Not
what
in
you
person. Yeah, yeah.
yeah. But a lot of times, thing like people with who don't who don't want to reach out, and that's a big thing is with recovery is it sort of people have the tendency to let their guard down if they're talking to a fellow addict, fellow alcoholic, being the same boat that they're in. Um, so yeah, it can be hard to get someone. It's like person has to decide that they want to get help, and
Hmm.
it's hard to force somebody to get help. It has to be like you
They
know,
have to really want it.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, yeah. Um, what would you say is your biggest struggle today, and what do you do? What are you doing about it? How do you cope with it?
Um, I think lately I've been having a lot of anxiety, and I've talked to a lot of doctors about it, and I think it's getting better. I think the day to day, um, having chronic mental health problems, it's a daily battle to get out of bed and have to sort of face the idea that you will probably hear voices, or you probably get paranoid or get manic, or having to deal with the daily mental health stuff.
Yeah. The medication you said though is like a miracle drug for you. What was that called?
Mm-hmm. Clozapine?
Clozapine. But it doesn't completely take away.
Not completely, no.
Yeah.
As long, as long as I don't take it, like it's so important that I take it that like there was actually one weekend where I forgot to go to the pharmacy on Friday, and the pharmacy was closed on the weekend, and so I was without the clozapine, and I actually went to um the ER to try to find a doctor that could prescribe me a few days worth of it. And so it's that critical that I take it.
Right.
It doesn't take care of everything, but like I think it takes care of the brunt of the disorder.
Right. It takes care of enough of it that you can definitely tell a difference if you're not on it, it sounds like.
Yeah,
And
like
even for just a day.
yeah, and like I won't yeah I won't get manic. That's usually what happens is I'll experience some kind of like mania if I don't have it. So
Did you ever do a DNA test to see what medications would work best for you?
a DNA test.
No. So
Would it,
I know somebody that was having was in an outpatient intensive outpatient therapy thing, and they did a DNA test to see just what your body metabolizes better than, and it was supposed to help pinpoint, because there's so many different medications on the market and it's so hit or miss what's going to work for each individual, that this DNA test is supposed to help narrow that
mm,
down a little bit. And I was just
oh,
curious if that was something you had ever done, and I'm surprised actually that you haven't. Or
no,
did you ever even heard of it?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I haven't even heard of that before, but
And what's
I'll
really
have to.
sad is this person had insurance and insurance did not cover that. It was like $600.
Oh,
It's crazy.
yeah,
I should
yeah.
probably didn't use that word, but it's
It's
just doesn't
okay.
make sense. The whole, it just doesn't make sense to me. Like the whole,
You mean like people? I think right now the mental health system is very strained. There's more and more mentally ill people needing help,
right. Well, I don't
especially
know that
with
there's more people. I think there's more people that we're talking about it more, right? And
right.
people are recognizing signs and symptoms maybe more than they were before, and seeking help more than they were before. I can't imagine that more people are suffering from it. I just think it's more
Yeah,
widely talked
yeah.
about. And so, yeah, I think supply and demand, right? There's too many people and not enough people to help. I know a
Yeah.
lot of people we were talking. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say that, like, yeah, like in my time looking for, I don't know if I forget if it was a therapist, but I was getting like waiting lists that were like 7 months long.
Mm-hmm.
And like when I worked at the rehab, we had one nurse for 50 people.
Right.
And I think also COVID, people, a lot of people became kind of dormant and developed mental health problems by being at
Mm-hmm.
home.
Yeah.
And one other thing about that is, I don't know if you've heard of NAMI.
Oh, the app.
No, it's a nonprofit. Stands for the National Alliance on Mental Illness.
I
It's
have
a
not.
not it's a nonprofit organization, and my dad was the president of the Maryland chapter for this. And essentially, what they do is the biggest thing is to spread awareness of mental health and inform people. They have events. They have like a walk that they do every year. Um, but we're kind of just talking about, the stigma, and
Mm-hmm.
um, I don't think my family understood at first what I was going through. Um, but I think yeah, because of organizations like NAMI, that awareness of mental health is spreading, and there's not as much stigma attached to it. People
Mm-hmm. Right.
understand it a little bit better.
Yeah. It's kind of ironic that I'm where I am now. Like I don't understand it. I personally have not dealt with chronic mental illness. Have I had bouts of depression here and there? Absolutely. Have I attempted suicide in the past? Absolutely. Um, but I don't have chronic mental illness. I've always been able to,
Hmm.
what I say, put my big girl panties on and work through it. And, there's, I've learned about toxic positivity, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I think that's me. I think I'm toxically positive sometimes. And I'm just like, just get over it, just get over it. Um, my ex-husband has mental depression. I would not, anything really bad, but I could not understand it while we were together. I could not. It was a big reason for our downfall. And I think it's kind of ironic now that I have a much better understanding for it than I did,
Yeah,
years ago.
mental health, yeah, and addiction as well. It's like
Mhm.
something that people are learning more about and understanding it a lot better. Because a lot of people think of it as like this selfish thing where
Mhm.
we're recklessly just using because we want to get high. We don't care about anybody else. It's really quite the opposite. It's people trying to stop, trying to get clean, and they're not always, successful at it. But of course, you said hope,
Mhm.
honesty, open mindedness, willingness. Um, I think my parents, yeah, they have a much better understanding now of sort of what I've been through. I have a depression on my mom's side, um, and like I also have depression. I was diagnosed with depression at 16.
Mhm. A lot of people, so I was starting to say before, but we were talking about the importance of the medication. And I know that that's a big issue with a lot of people, that they just stop
Mhm.
taking their medication. Why is that?
That is I think if we knew the answer to that question, like it was night and day once I started taking my medication, and I didn't stop taking it. That is a huge issue. Is I think more often than not, when somebody gets prescribed a psychiatric medication, they don't take it. It's more often that they don't take it than they do.
Right. Yeah.
I think personally, I think it's a denial. Like it's like almost like if you're taking your medication, you're admitting that you need that medication, that you need help, and that you have a
Yeah.
mental health issue, and people just don't want to deal with that. They're just like, I'm okay. I don't need help. I'm not one of those people,
Hmm.
quote unquote, that needs help.
Well, I think I've also heard, and I think about the movie A Beautiful Mind, one of my all-time favorite movies, by the
Great
way.
movie. I love that
Yeah.
movie.
And it took away his ability to solve the mathematical equations or whatever. Like it took away, and it could, sometimes I think take away a piece of somebody
Hmm.
that they like about themselves,
That's true.
and kind of takes away from their personality. I think that might be part of it. But then I feel like if that's happening, try something else, talk to the doctor about it and say this
Yeah.
what's going on, and have that open communication. But that's not easy either. Like in the case of my personal person right now that's going through it with the public mental health system. Like she might have to wait a month before she can even talk to somebody to change it. And then, yeah, anyway,
Hmm.
it's difficult is all I'm saying. It's difficult. And I don't want to beat that dead horse of, oh my gosh, it's so hard. So don't even try. I don't want to come across that way at all. This, don't give up is the message. Just keep trying. And I think another reason I've heard is that the medication makes them feel better and think they don't need the medication anymore.
Yeah,
They think they're cured.
that's.
It's not a cure.
I thought that movie was very well done as far as like, I think when the movie came out, it didn't have schizophrenia yet. But when I watched it after I had gotten schizophrenia, uh, I thought they did an excellent job
Yeah.
of uh, describing of what it's like.
Well, it was
And
based on a true story, I believe, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
yes, yeah, the game theory
Yeah.
guy came up with.
Yeah. I've always loved that movie. I've always thought it was very, very well done.
Yeah, that's a good point
But
though, that you have like he's taking the medication and it makes some of his symptoms go away, but it's like he's almost like sterile, like he's like just
right.
numb.
He's numb. Exactly.
Yeah,
Numb, I think, is a good word that I've heard
yeah,
people describe when they're taking certain medications. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah,
But it obviously didn't, what you're on obviously didn't do that for you because you were able to write a fantastic book.
yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Um, what advice would you have for somebody that's trying to get clean or trying to handle mental health? Both, all of the above?
Um, honestly, support groups, AANA, anything like that. Just to give it a shot. Try at least try the sort of the um when,
Go in with an open mind.
yeah, um hopefully if you go to a meeting, or if you think that that definition, what's an alcoholic, what is an addict, if you think that describes you, um hopefully get help, get treatment before it gets to the point of hitting bottom and needing to hit bottom to do anything differently. Um,
What advice do you have for a person a caregiver? I know I asked the question, does your family or your support group check in on you? What can I do to be a better support to my friend?
hmm, um, I don't know. I don't know how to answer that. Like, eh, um, just not giving up on them.
Mhm.
Under having an understanding of what they're going through. Um,
Okay.
Sort of thinking of my parents, because they were for years they tried to help me, and um I would not be here without their support.
Yeah.
So yeah, even if you feel like it's um just try to get them to go to a meeting, see if they think that describes them as a person. um
Yeah.
yeah, that I also worked at a as a peer support specialist. um that was my last job that I had. Peer support specialist is somebody with has experienced mental health and or substances uh, together, and if to get certified, you have to have um, if it's a year or 6 months, a certain amount of minimum amount of clean time, um, and basically a peer support specialist job is to sort of draw on their own experience to try to help other people.
Mm-hmm.
So I worked in a dual diagnosis place for a while and saw a lot of people in and out. There were regulars that would show up almost every day, and those seem to be the people that they've been coming around the place for a while and really benefited from it. And then there were kind of like the other. I don't want to call them. I already said the word other, but there was like some people that would attend one class so that they could use the shower and
Mm-hmm.
get some of the food that was donated. And I mean, my parents, it took years, but eventually I did come around and decided I had enough, and um, sort of saw it as a second chance. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I think I had a second chance that I took. Um, Also cliche, but second chances are rare.
Right.
My friend at the time said, um, if I was given a second chance, I would probably take it. And so that kind of worked on me a little bit
Mm-hmm.
at the time. Um,
Are you, I know you mentioned God in the book here and there. At one point I think you said a God you didn't believe in. Where do you stand? Where do you fall with that today?
um, I think I sort of returned to the God that I in the book kind of turned my back on. Um, I pray every day, morning and night. Sort of that almost, I don't know how you would, a God that's in the Bible without actually adhering to the Bible too much, or not necessarily the Bible, but that's the identity of a higher power that
Mm-hmm.
I relate to the most.
Okay.
I've heard that like if it's not as important that you decide what what God or what higher power that you believe in, or just that you believe in something. It's kind of a prerequisite.
And then one final question, unless you have any last words, is are you happier now?
Much happier. Yeah, I wouldn't call that street life as being a happy life. You
Yeah.
know, um, it's a big thing to have a roof over my head, not having to worry. I think there was one time that I literally slept on a bench outside, and like I didn't have a blanket, so I was like using I had like a suitcase full of clothes in it, and I was using like my clothes to create a blanket, and also going to the shelter sometimes. It is like something that you can take for granted, is having not having to worry about
Mhm.
having somewhere to sleep at night. But I'm definitely happy. I wouldn't call the level of addiction that I dealt with as happiness.
Yeah.
Like, the drugs, they make you feel good, but they don't, or not, it's not a happy lifestyle.
Right. Yeah. Well, thank you so much.
Sure.
Thanks for dealing with all my personal questions.
No, it's fine. I mean, it ended up being a pretty personal conversation, and I appreciate you being open. And I always, it's not a requirement, but I feel like it's easier um, with some of the issues that I've had and have that. I think it's easier for me to be open and not be worried about. 'Cause some people are like really uptight about who knows what about them and secretive, but I think being open is a good way to go.
I do too. I really do, because, if the message reaches one person and it helps one person, you know, that's all we can ask for. And if you're not
Exactly.
open about it, especially after, recovering and becoming as successful as you have, finishing college, writing a book, writing 2 books, and probably more, right? And dealing with a serious mental illness and being able to be independent and financially support yourself and be happy is huge. That's huge. And I sure how huge that is, but just in case you didn't,
Yeah,
it's huge. So, congratulations to you and all the hard work you've put in, and your family and the hard work they've put in, and not not giving up on you. And but that story needs to be told.
for
It needs to
sure.
be heard. So thank you.
Yeah, I've heard that along the way that the story needs to be told, and I know my mom's always asking me when each podcast is going to come out, so she'll definitely be watching this. Just want to say again, my name is Ryan Gray. I'm working on a website at the moment. So I don't have a website. I have social media, Facebook, Ryan Gray. The name of the book is just Twilight in York. So Amazon tends to be where I direct all the book buying traffic. So
All right. And I recommend the book highly.
thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Appreciate that.
You are welcome. And you have a lovely afternoon. I just want to say thank you so much for tuning in to Without Regret, the podcast. I really appreciate it. And I'd like to ask you to please like and subscribe. Leave me a review wherever you get your podcast. That would be really awesome, because that's how my podcast is going to get noticed. So that would be a huge help, or share it on your social media would be awesome as well. Thank you so much. This podcast is a Without Regret production, which is produced by me. Artwork is by me. Everything's by me except for that theme song. That's by a guy named Michael Bruguglio. You can follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/Without Regret Podcast, and on Instagram at without_regret_podcast. Thanks again.